locked down to we only can start at 9 o'clock. So it seems like every year that's a bit of an issue. Well, but with that, we'll go ahead and I'll call this meeting to order. And first off, we'll do a roll call.
1 second, please. I'm just, pardon me. I just pushed it out for the live streaming. District 1. District 1.
Looks like he has not joined us yet, so maybe we'll come back.
District 2. District 3.
I'm here for a little while. I have to leave and then I'll come back.
Thank you. District 4. District 5. Banning. Beaumont.
Here.
Blythe. Calamasa. Canyon Lake.
Here.
Cathedral City.
Here.
Coachella. Corona.
Present.
Desert Hot Springs.
Present.
Eastvale.
Here.
Hemet.
Here.
Indian Wells.
Present.
Indio.
Here.
Harupa Valley.
Here.
La Quinta.
Here.
Lake Elsinore.
Here.
Menifee.
Here.
Moreno Valley. Marietta.
Here.
Norco.
Here.
Palm Desert.
Here.
Palm Springs. Paris.
Here.
Rancho Mirage.
Here.
Riverside. San Jacinto.
Here.
Temecula. Wildemar.
Here.
Caltrans District 8. District 1.
Excuse me, Lisa, I think we have at least one commissioner who has not been admitted to the webinar yet.
Okay.
District 1 needs to be brought over.
And District 2.
Okay.
Okay, District 1 is here. I was let in.
Okay.
I have District 1 and District 2 and Blythe.
Blythe is here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You see anyone else, Tara? Oh, I see Commissioner Middleton. Palm Springs.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, I apologize for that.
Lisa, Supervisor Perez as well. He just entered.
Oh, thank you. District 4.
Here. There was someone on from Caltrans earlier, but I don't know if Mr. Penning dropped off.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we got everybody over now from the previous meeting. Very good. All right, with that, we'll go into the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Speaker, would you like to lead us in the pledge again?
Please join me in the 31 words that allow us to gather and to make decisions we do and remember those that are protecting those freedoms. I pledge allegiance
Just
to the flag
flag
of the
United
States of
States of
America
America,
and to the republic for which it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Thank you, Supervisor. All right, with that, we'll go into general public comments for items not on the agenda. At this time, we're asking for any public comments for items not on the agenda. We need to hit the raise hand button on your device or *9 on your phone. Not seeing any hands raised. Do we have any general public comments that were received via email or mail?
No, sir.
All right. Again, if you're on the meeting and you wish to speak during public comment, this is the time. You need to hit the raise hand button or *9 if you're on the phone. And I'm not seeing anyone's raised hand on the public side. All right, with that, we'll go into item number 5, additions or revisions. Lisa, any changes there or no?
No, sir.
One change I'd like to go ahead and make is to go ahead and bring up item number 9, the elections of the commission officers. And the reason for doing this is that usually we would do this at the dais and we would all fill out a piece of paper if there were 2 nominations. And we obviously can't do that right now. So the backup plan is that Steve and I have talked about, and Mayor and myself, is that we will email in our ballots if there is more than 1 nomination. So with that, we'll go ahead and go to that item number 9. And Steve, is there any other notes I need to make on that, or do we go ahead and move forward?
No, we can move forward initially with a voice vote, and then if there are any under our policies, there are situations where written ballots are required. In that case, we will do the written emails.
Very good. So in my understanding, the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and do the election of chair. So
Correct.
With that, I will open the nominations. Now, of course, our vice chair right now is, excuse me, Councilmember Harnick.
Mr.
And,
Chairman, I'd like to nominate Jan Harnick for chair.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion from Russ Betts and a second from Raymond Gregory.
I move the
Any other
nomination be closed and it should be elected by unanimous consent.
Second.
Well, I believe the unanimous consent part, I'm not sure if we can do that during a video meeting. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, it is. We cannot do that.
But it's
We will
not
go
that I
ahead and-
don't, I like it though, Dana.
I like it too. I wish we can.
Yeah, I like it too.
I apologize.
Brilliant, Dana, brilliant.
I really hope someday our elected officials in Sacramento will allow us to update the Brown Act and allow for such action. For now, we'll have to go ahead and take a roll call vote.
District 1.
Can we do the chairman and the first vice chairman at the same time?
Oh, that's not a bad idea. Let's go ahead and do that.
And I would like to nominate Supervisor Perez as,
And I'd like to second that.
okay.
All right, so we have a first and second on that. Any other nominations for second vice chair?
Vice chair.
Or, excuse me, vice chair?
Yes.
Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and close the nominations. And Lisa, will we take a roll call on both of those?
District 1,
District 1, yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 4,
Aye. Thank you.
District 5, District 5, Banning, Beaumont,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Calamasa, Canyon Lake, Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella, Corona,
Aye.
Desert Hot Springs,
Yes.
Eastville,
Aye.
Hemet,
Yes.
Indian Wells,
Yes.
Indio,
Aye.
Harupa Valley,
Yes.
La Quinta,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Menifee,
Aye.
Moreno Valley, Marietta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Paris,
Aye.
Rancho Mirage,
Yes.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Yes.
Wildemar,
Yes.
item passes.
Very good. With that, we'll go into the election for second vice chair. I see Dana, you got your hand raised. Go right ahead.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Bob McGee from the wonderful city of Lake Elsinore.
I'll second that.
Very good. I have a first and second for Councilmember McGee.
I'd like to nominate Brian Bergson.
I have a nomination for Brian Bergson. Oh, and do I have a second for that?
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Witten. Any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed.
Very good. All right, with that, we are required to do a written vote on this one. And we talked about in our bylaws, maybe changing this, but right now this is how we're sort of stuck. So what I'm going to ask at this point is everyone send an email to Lisa, right? Is that what we're going to do, Lisa?
I could interrupt, Mr. Chair. Actually, for the first step, a written vote is not required. We have two, for simply two nominees. We will have a vote, and we'll see whether or not either of them get 50% of the votes of the full commission. If the winner who gets it, and if we have a winner and that winner gets 50%, then the item is concluded and the winner is appointed. If the winner does not get 50% of the commissioners voting, then we have a further runoff process. But for right now, we're going to have we can do a voice vote with the two nominees on the ballot.
So could the response just be simply Bergson or McGee and just make it one vote? Can you go ahead and do that?
Yes.
All right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and go into a voice vote. The response, either McGee or Brian Bergson, and we'll go from there.
District 1,
Bob McGee.
District 2,
Bergson.
District 3, District 4,
Bob McGee.
District 5, Banning, Beaumont,
Bob McGee.
Blythe,
McGee.
Calamasa, Canyon Lake,
Mayor McGee.
Cathedral City,
Bob McGee.
Coachella, Corona,
Bob McGee.
Desert Hot Springs,
Bob McGee.
Eastvale,
Bergson.
Hemet.
Bergson,
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Brian Bergson,
Indian Wells,
McGee.
Indio,
Bob McGee.
Krupa Valley,
Bergson.
La Quinta,
McGee,
Elsinore,
McGee.
Menifee,
McGee.
Moreno Valley, Marietta,
Brian Bergson.
Norco,
Bergson.
Palm Desert,
McGee,
Palm Springs,
Bergson.
Paris,
Bob McGee.
Rancho Mirage,
McGee.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
McGee.
Wildemar,
Mayor McGee.
one moment, please.
What happened to Temecula?
Temecula is not attending.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Thank you. I have 18 votes for Bob McGee.
Congratulations, Councilmember McGee or Mayor McGee. Sorry, Brian, and thank you all for doing that. I know it's not our normal way of doing that, but I appreciate we all got it done. Any other comments on this item? If not, we'll go ahead and go on to our regular consent calendar at this point.
Just say, this is Brian Berkson. Just thank you for those who supported me. I appreciate that, and congrats to Bob. I know you've been there for a long time, and you'll make an excellent second vice chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate all the support and look forward to serving in this role moving forward. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all. All right, with that, we'll take us to the consent calendar. Item number 6.
Move to approve.
Motion by Norco,
Second, Paris.
second by Paris.
District 1,
District 1, yes. Sorry.
that's okay. District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 4,
Yes.
District 5,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Calamasa, Canyon Lake, Canyon Lake, Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella, Corona,
Aye.
Desert Hot Springs,
Sorry.
Eastville,
Aye.
Hemet,
Yes.
Indian Wells,
Yes.
Indio, Indio,
Aye.
Cooperative Valley,
Yes.
La Quinta,
Sorry, yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Menifee,
Aye.
Moreno Valley, Marietta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Paris,
Yes.
Rancho Mirage,
Yes.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Yes.
Wildemar.
Yes,
The item passes.
very good. That brings us to item number 7, the state and federal legislative update.
Yes, good morning, Chair Benoit and commissioners. I'm pleased to be with you today. The Commission annually adopts a legislative platform that serves as the framework for policy positions the Commission will take on various legislation, administrative policies, and regulations under consideration in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. The proposed 2021 state and federal legislative platform before you builds on previously adopted Commission platforms, but with some revisions to acknowledge the policy changes in discussion at the state and federal level. In particular, this draft reaffirms local planning and project control, supports expansion of multimodal transportation, and ensures that rural, low-income, and disadvantaged communities in Riverside County benefit from equity-based transportation planning and implementation policies. These adjustments and other proposed changes reinforce the Commission's position on the need for a regional variance to policy implementation, accommodation for regions with high population growth, and flexibility with funding and project delivery. One size does not fit all when it comes to transportation policy in Southern California, and it's important that our platform and our communications with our elected delegation communicate this. These platform points allow staff, commissioners, the commission's lobbyists to communicate in a timely, effective manner with state and federal agencies as issues arise. This will be especially important as Congress prepares to reauthorize surface transportation programs in 2021. At the state level, the legislature began a new 2-year session this week, with the budget deficit as one of the top priorities. Following the swearing in and organizational sessions of both the Assembly and the Senate, members began introducing bills for the new session. Numerous bills have already been introduced since Monday. Even so, the reality is that the impact of COVID-19 will likely continue to drive policy decisions and legislative procedures as we move into 2021. But staff is committed to participating in the policymaking process to deliver transportation projects in Riverside County. And finally, in my last report to the Commission, I was encouraged to bring back some positive news. Today, I'm happy to share that last week, the California Transportation Commission approved CTC staff recommendations to award $58.1 million from the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program for RCTC's 7191 Interchange Improvement Project. Having these funds recommended for award will ensure this project gets delivered. I want to thank CTC Commissioner Tavalloni for his vote supporting staff recommendation, and RCTC's planning and programming staff for submitting a competitive application. I want to also thank our capital project staff for their support and input in the process, and Caltrans for being a co-sponsor to our application. 2 additional projects in Riverside County also received CTC approval for grant awards, including the McKinley Avenue Railroad Street Grade Separation Project sponsored by the City of Corona, and the Limonite Avenue Gap Closure Project sponsored by the City of Eastvale. While CTC commissioners voted unanimously for the projects recommended for SB1 competitive grant awards, some commissioners expressed disappointment that zero emission or clean tech projects were not successful in receiving grants. It was made clear by some commissioners that CTC is not going to continue on a path of business as usual, and that future grant awards should go to projects that are in alignment with the state's climate action goals, including in the areas of active transportation, converting both private and public fleet vehicles to zero emissions, reducing VMT, developing alternative fuel corridors, and increased funding for multimodal transportation. While we were successful this round for the grant award, based on input from commissioners, I believe RCTC's concerns over the last few months regarding grant awards were not unwarranted. If commissioners are successful in making changes briefly discussed at the CTC meeting last week, CTC will adopt future grant guidelines that will place a higher value on projects that achieve the governor's climate action goals. This means an overall reduction in new highway investment. We will continue to bring our voice to those future discussions to ensure Riverside County is positioned to get its share of transportation investment. This concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Very good. Comments or questions? Not seeing any hands raised.
Wait.
Councilmember Harnick, go right ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for the update and for the good news. We'll take that. I have a couple comments on the platform as it is presented. And are we ready to take a couple comments on that at this point?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. So we talk about in here innovation, and we also talk about teleworking. And I'm wondering if, and I didn't see it in here, and perhaps it is, that if we should be adding something that says that broadband is part of infrastructure and we should support any legislation that includes broadband in the legislation of transportation infrastructure. And I know we are at SCAG working with anybody who will listen to us to get included in the stimulus packages for transportation infrastructure, have included into it fiber and broadband. And is there some way we can say that we're encouraging funding when we're doing any significant disruption of any transportation infrastructure, that we also include something that will accommodate broadband and fiber? It kind of works with our teleworking as that we mention in here as well. So I have another comment, of course. When we talk about goods movement, and I'm scrolling down to get this on my screen, we did talk about in one of the new additional bullets that oppose increasing the capacity or intensity of freight movement in and near Riverside County without commensurate mitigation of impacts. Is that to include what's going on in the Colton area as far as the freight yard that is being proposed there to accommodate high-speed rail?
Yes, Commissioner, that is to accommodate that.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'd like us to take a look, if we might, at talking about, the definition, since the information highway and broadband, if we can include that some way where we are encouraging that for this region. We've all seen how necessary it is. And then in the not in the corrected version, also under innovation, I think we're just missing a bullet there under support, implementation and expansion, etc. Those are my comments.
Very good. Councilmember Reed, I see your hand raised.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that with broadband, you're not talking about using transportation money to install broadband, but merely to make it a sort of a longitudinal encroachment committee type of thing where we would allow them to go along the road. But you're not suggesting that we actually build the broadband.
Well, if we are disrupting, no, not the broadband, the infrastructure for the broadband. So if we are yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Which is just a pipe that goes along the freeway or the highway. I mean, it's really quite simple, right? If not, then I think we need more discussion before we take a policy decision that diverts highway money or transportation money to non-transportation usage.
Well, in effect, I think we could give it, if we are working to have it defined as transportation or infrastructure. And I agree, we do need more discussion, but that is why I mentioned we should be encouraging funds as we build our transportation, our classically defined transportation infrastructure, that at that time there should be funds available to make sure that we're able to put in the conduit / infrastructure necessary for the information highway. How'd I do on that, Mr. Reed?
Look, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I just want to make it clear that we need a lot of discussion before we take transportation money and put it into something other than real transportation, not digital transportation. But I'll give you all, as the new chair, I'll let you do whatever you want, but let's discuss this and not just assume that it's okay and we move forward.
Okay, and to lay a little bit more of a foundation there, I know with everyone we're talking to, we are strongly encouraging any stimulus dollars from Washington, D.C. that may come our way to include the ability to put in broadband, including that under the infrastructure bills that may come forward.
Right. Well, Caltrans does have or at least what they used to call, maybe they still do, a longitudinal encroachment committee that allows other parties to put broadband, et cetera, or anything along the right of way, and that's perfectly acceptable. But Caltrans doesn't put in the broadband; they just make it available for somebody else to do it.
And we want people to do that for sure, but we may have to start looking at this a little differently. I think that we have seen COVID has not only accelerated the process and for the need of broadband, but it's also magnified it. So we may have to look at it a little differently, but I think this deserves a vibrant discussion.
I agree. Thank you. And welcome to the chairmanship, Madam Chairman.
Why, thank you.
Supervisor Perez?
I just want to echo the sentiment by our newly elected chairwoman, Jan Harnick, as the chair. I think that's a great catch, Jan. Appreciate your point. I would just suggest that we continue this discussion and figure out, where SCAG is on all this now. Obviously, you have organizations like CSAC. This is a major movement that's just grown, which is an important one, as we all know. And on Monday's announcement or speaker's speech, he stated out loud, this is the #1 priority for the state legislature. And others agree with him there, as well as in the Senate. And we know as well that on the first day, folks like Assembly Member Murasachi, I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but as well, our own Assembly Member Eduardo Garcia, actually, and another Assembly Member, I can't remember the name, joined in together as a force and introduced legislation for a bond measure that will help fund broadband and the digital divide concerns that we have for the state of California in the billions of dollars. So there's a lot of movement, and I think there needs to be more discussion so that we can figure out where our role is. But nonetheless, though, I definitely do think this topic, this issue should also be front and center. Although obviously I do support Dana as well in ensuring that the dollars that we receive are dollars for transportation projects that we need. But any opportunity that we have as RCTC, as an entity, to also advocate on the other end for broadband infrastructure, we should do so. So I just want to echo the same sentiment, and thank you for bringing this up, Jen. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Hartnick, or I guess Chairwoman-elect, or thank you. I think it's a great idea. Good catch, like the other commissioners have said. But because frankly, anything that keeps people off the freeway is a transportation project. And I agree with Commissioner Reed that we shouldn't be diverting transportation dollars to these things. However, I think there is a broader need for a policy statement, not only on the digital side, but on economic development. And in part, in Measure A, we have funds that are supposed to be going to economic development, because frankly, the more people we get to work where they live and live where they work, we're going to be able to stretch out our transportation dollars and our transportation needs. So I think that it's definitely needs to be a broader policy discussion, and to come up with, even if it's a policy statement on that side, I think it's important for us to tie those three things together, because we do need to tie together transportation, housing, and economic development. All three of those things should be tied at the hip all the time. The idea that transportation is an island, housing is an island, and economic development as an island is thinking that has got us into, kind of where we are in both our housing mess and being so far behind in transportation. So I do think we need a broader policy discussion and finding ways to link all those three things together.
Thank you. Supervisor Washington?
Thank you, Ben. Do we call you Ben Past, or I missed the vote? I had to step out. And I know Jan is ready to step in. I think she's already taken over from you. So I'm not sure what to call you.
Not quite. I think to the end of the year, I still hold the actual chairman.
All right,
That's
good,
okay.
good. You've had a great, outstanding year in very trying times. As I was listening, I raised my hand and then I listened to my colleague from the 4th District. His points were outstanding and right on point, as were Jan's. And I'm in full support of a collaborative effort. If we're digging holes, and I remember when Verizon laid Fios in Temecula, and everywhere all around town, you saw, at the curbside, a good 4 feet dug up while they were laying the pipes to run the Fios cable. And it was inconvenient for a period of time, but eventually we got past that. There's no point to not be doing the laying of those pipes if those trenches are already open. And as Supervisor Perez referenced, this has become a major policy issue for the State Association of Counties. And I believe there's going to be significant lobbying and push towards bridging and I think there was some language or we were using that were perhaps confusing. We all think of infrastructure when we're at RCTC as roads, but the actual physical conveyance of what goes through broadband is also referred to as infrastructure. It's the infrastructure to deliver the broadband. And that has to be put in place to build a connected broadband network by which then we connect our communities for all kinds of benefits. At CSAC, it started with the rural counties because they're so divided, they're so rural, and connectivity is a challenge for them. It's never thought of in urban counties because we are not rural for the most part, but we still have gaps in broadband service. And so the benefits begin to be, if we connect our communities across our entire county, across our entire region, it's a platform for growth of the new innovative businesses that will use and rely on technology to grow their business. It is also a way to bridge the social divide, as we're seeing now with many kids who are forced to do distance learning are not able to do that because they don't have access to the internet, they don't have access to broadband, they don't have devices. That's another issue to be supported through other separate efforts, but you can't do that without building the broadband network. So whatever we can do and whatever conversation needs to take place to get us there, I'm in support of, but it should be all of us, whether it be RCTC, SCAG, and CSAC, and I know they're not League of Cities anymore. I think they're Cal Cities. All of us working together to that same outcome that we all want. Those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Middleton?
Thank you. I want to echo the same comments that my colleagues have made with regard to broadband, but I also want to pick up on Councilmember Speak's comments. One of the things that we have seen as a result of this year is the capacity for organizations to have people working from home who thought they never could do so. And that has had an incredibly important effect on our transportation networks. We've taken cars off the road because individuals are working from home. And I believe we should take every step that we can to make certain that as we move forward out of the COVID-19 crisis, that we still continue to have employers allowing their employees to work from home, and we encourage, as a matter of public policy, that individuals be able to work from home whenever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harnick?
Thank you. And so quickly, under alternatives to driving, the subheading of teleworking/remote working, and it talks about engage in policy discussions that utilize teleworking as a method to reduce traffic congestion. And then it goes a little further, but it might fit well under there as well, but just where we can put it, but I think it fits in well.
I agree.
I wholeheartedly agree. You know, I used to work in the IT industry, and most of that was in the Coachella Valley. And I will say that it's extremely difficult in some parts of the Coachella Valley to get good internet, especially towards the far eastern side of the valley. And I recognize that that's something that needs to be worked on. And As we look at infrastructure going in that area, if there's more infrastructure to be done, especially along Highway 86, to have that not the connect necessarily connectivity, but at least the conduit will make it a lot easier someday for some organization to lay further fiber in that area. And I can definitely see the actual benefit and the true benefit long-term on that. This is definitely a good long-term solution to a problem that continues to plague certain areas of our country. So I think that's all the members of the body that wanted to speak on this. Ann, did you want to wrap this up?
I do. Thank you, commissioners, for the healthy conversation there. I think we can add a bullet under alternatives to driving that says something along the lines related to support efforts to implement broadband access throughout Riverside County. So I think we can add a generic statement there. There are, as has been mentioned, there are a lot of conversations about this taking place in multiple arenas. We believe that at the federal level, the bill HR 2 is likely going to have broadband related funding included in some sort of package at the federal level. We know the conversation is taking place at the state level. I say support efforts because from a practical standpoint, RCTC doesn't own, with the exception of our Paris Valley line right of way, we don't own the freeway corridor. So we'll have to do whatever policies Caltrans adopts related to implement, installation of broadband facilities in their mainline corridor. We'll have to comply with that. At the local level, certainly it would be up to your jurisdictions. Perhaps there could be conversations about whether or not broadband infrastructure becomes an eligible expenditure in the TUMF program. So I think there's a lot of conversations here that are going to be taking place at the local, regional, state, and federal level. And we can certainly participate in those conversations. And I think part of that conversation will be is at what point is it or is it not appropriate to use transportation dollars, whether they be measure funds or at the state level, whether they'll be converting funding that was intended for roadway and direct transportation, whether that's legally allowed to convert that over to broadband infrastructure. So I think that's going to be a hot debate this year, and we're happy to be part of that conversation at the state level, working with our partner agencies at SCAG and Caltrans as well. So thank you.
Very good. So I don't see any other hands raised at this time. I guess we'll go ahead and, do we need to take a motion on this then? That'd be my understanding. So Councilmember Harnick, do you want to make a motion with that addendum?
Yes, please. So moved.
A second.
Very good. I'll have a second from Councilmember Speak. Any public comment on this item? Not seeing any hands raised on the attendee side. Again, if you're on the phone, it'll be *9. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and call the roll.
District 1,
I think he had to step off.
thank you. District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5, District 5, Beaumont,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Calamasa, Canyon Lake, Canyon Lake,
Aye.
Cathedral City,
Yes.
Coachella, Corona,
Aye.
Desert Hot Springs,
Aye.
Eastville,
Aye.
Hemet,
Yes.
Indian Wells,
Aye.
Indio,
Aye.
Carupa Valley,
Yes.
La Quinta,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Aye.
Menifee,
Aye.
Marietta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Palm Desert,
Yes.
Palm Springs,
Aye.
Paris,
Yes.
Rancho Mirage,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Sure.
Wildemar.
Yes,
The item passes.
very good. With that, we'll go on to item number 8, the Coachella Valley San Antonio Pass Rail Corridor Planning Study Update. Sheldon Peterson, go right ahead.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Benoit, members of the commission. As the presentation gets up, I just want to thank everyone for their patience and support on this project. Today we'll go over an update of kind of where we are. I know we have a lot of new commissioners since we started this project many years ago, so I'll kind of cover some of the background, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about how this project is moving forward. So next slide. Like I said, we'll go over the overview, purpose and need, some of the history, and then the next steps. Next slide. So we started this project talking about the purpose and need, and we worked with our consultant, JD Douglas from HDR, who's actually on board today if we have any questions. And one of the things he brought home to me was that before we start any of these projects, we really need to nail down the purpose and need for the project. So for this particular project, for the Coachella Valley San Antonio Pass Rail Corridor project, the overall purpose of the project is to provide a safe, reliable, convenient intercity passenger rail service that would meet the future mobility needs of the residents, businesses, and visitors within the corridor. That's the language that we put together years ago. As we previously had that discussion, climate change is now becoming even more important and relevant in transportation. So as we go forward, we'll keep an eye on that and make sure that we incorporate those goals and those objectives in the project as well. Next slide, please. So basically what we're trying to do with this project is connect the communities of Los Angeles, Orange County, Western Riverside, on the way to Eastern Riverside or the Coachella Valley. What we know, and you all probably know, is there's strong bidirectional demand for transportation. Coachella Valley is a leader with world-class events, both the music festivals that draw hundreds of thousands of fans, golf and tennis champions, also the resort destination. If you don't like snow, it's the place to be in the winter. And there's plenty of natural attractions and other stuff going on. I love the picture here of the living desert, which is one of our family's favorites. Had everything. My son would love to go look at the animals. My other son would love to go to look at the model trains. So it's a little rail plug for those of you who don't know. They have a real nice model railroad system there at the living desert. So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of bidirectional demand. So basically the trip purposes are for all types of train users. You have business, you have social, you have medical, leisure, recreational. A rail service provides an alternative that would basically meet needs of a broad range of constituents. Next slide. As we talk a little bit defining the project, for me, it's always helpful to see something on a map to know what we're really referring to. We worked a lot of effort to get to our preferred alternative, which is shown here. The project, as stated today, would require 2 daily round trips of an Amtrak-like train going back and forth between Los Angeles and Indio Coachella. It's broken up into 2 sections of host railroads. On the west, we have the BNSF San Bernardino sub, roughly 68 miles, and the eastern section is on the Union Pacific Railroad of 76 miles. As we go forward, we'll look at multiple station areas to be evaluated. Some are existing and some would be proposed and need to be built. When we focus on the map, we look at the western end, we have Los Angeles Union Station. From there, you can connect all kinds of places. Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, San Diego, all the local events and stuff in LA County, as long as even their light rail and other systems are available once we connect there. Stopping in Fullerton, we connect most of Orange County. You can connect to trains, local transit. You can get to Disneyland and all the hubs for visitors. Want to come and see all of Southern California, both Coachella Valley and Disneyland. This would be a great, strong connection. When we go towards Riverside, we have an existing station that serves extensive Metrolink service. Connecting there would get us connections to our Paris Valley line and potentially flyaway service in the future to Ontario Airport and other connections there. For proposed stations are listed on this map in green. So we have like the Loma Linda, Redlands, You got universities and hospitals and the Veterans Hospital there as a possible destination. We go to the Pass area, you got Banning, Beaumont, strongly growing communities, need some more transportation, as well as Morongo is a huge trip generator. So it's a lot of potential there. We have an existing station at Palm Springs. For some of you who noticed it out there, it's standing in the middle of the windmill farm. We would love to put the station in downtown. However, that would require moving the tracks. So that's a little bit out of the scope for this, but there would be strong connections to bring people from the train station off the 10 freeway into downtown to make that connection. Going forward, we look at a Mid-Valley station, somewhere Rancho Mirage potentially near Agua Caliente. Provide great trip resources from there as well. A future station in Indio to meet the festival needs. City of Indio is a strong supporter. They've done station feasibility studies. They're working on a multimodal study for our station location and really want to support the service. So we're excited with that. Also, as part of the environmental document, we have included the Coachella, City of Coachella as a possible destination. When we talk about equity and connecting communities, it could be a very strong link that we could add to this project with relatively minor capital expense. So next slide. As we look for the big question has always been, should this be an Amtrak service and why is it not a Metrolink service? For train trips over 3 hours, personally, I would prefer a reclining seat and an opportunity to go to the snack bar, lounge car to make it a more convenient trip. It would attract the visitors and the business travelers who are looking for a long trip. We show some tentative schedules on the map there. Basically, what we would do is try to have the trains, go both directions, one in the morning and one in the evening, and try to avoid some of the peak commuter traffic in the LA market to offset and not cause congestion. The other key reason for Amtrak is when it was formed almost 50 years ago, they took over the railroads from the freights, and part of that transition was Amtrak is allowed certain operating rights. Although not free, they do have better leverage over the host railroads than Metrolink, for example. Even with the Amtrak's rights, track improvements are normally required to minimize the impact to the fleet. Next slide. And also, as we look at the state rail network, a lot of people ask me kind of why should we push for Coachella Valley or Riverside County or Inland Empire? I always state that when you look at the existing network that the state's currently funding of intercity trains, you have the Pacific Surfliner, which is the second busiest corridor in the nation, going from San Diego through Orange County, LA, Santa Barbara to San Luis Obispo. They have a strong network. They're running, 26 daily trains on that. Their needs are being met with intercity rail. Similarly, Central Valley has the San Joaquins connecting to the Bay Area, connecting to Sacramento. There's also the Capital Corridor connecting from points as far east as Auburn through Sacramento into Oakland and then down to San Jose. So the Bay Area is covered, Sacramento is covered, LA, the coast is covered. The people who are missing out on rail at this point really is Riverside County and San Bernardino County from my perspective. There are long distance train routes, but they're not frequent enough to really meet our needs. So we really want to look to explore and get involved in the state's intercity rail network. Next slide. So we've had a cooperative planning effort. Cooperative is relative to certain opinions. We've worked closely with the FRA, who's provided us a grant for the project. Caltrans as well has been a strong partner in coordinating this effort, along with Amtrak and high-speed rail as far as them being a future connecting partner. We've also had strong support from regional partners, all the local transportation agencies, LA, Orange County, San Bernardino, the LOSAN agency, which we're members of, that also supports the Pacific Surfliner, Metrolink for commuter rail, SCAG for regional transportation, and of course our dear friends at CVAG, who are strong partners in this and actually initiated a lot of the effort by spearheading and the champions in that region, set aside a bus rail split that provided the initial fundings for us to start this alternative analysis. So the leadership in the Valley, especially at the time with Supervisor Benoit and Greg Pettis and all the team out there, along with the champions who are still there, really started this project off. So we have strong partners there, as well as a lot of local supporters with the local cities, as I mentioned, Indio, Palm Springs is strong supporters. We work closely with the Palm Springs Convention and Visitor Bureau Center, Economic Partnership, Golden Voice with the festivals, and the Rail Passenger Association. So we know there's a lot of support, and we're trying to keep this project moving forward. Next slide. So project history. So way back in 1991, when I started my career as a reservation agent for Amtrak, I kept fielding calls for people wanting to get to Palm Springs. Had to explain to them it's a long distance train, 3 days a week, arrives there in the middle of the night. Nobody liked that, but at the same time, RCTC started their first round of studies talking about how to evaluate what it would take to run service from Los Angeles to India. Through the years, there's been updates to those studies, looking at weekend service, various opportunities. But as I mentioned, in 2013, with the bus rail split and moves from CVAG, we really started the project in earnest and worked to complete our alternatives analysis and get federal funding for the stage of the process that we're currently in. Next slide. So that with a little bit of the history brings us to our current point of where we are in the process. We've spent several years working on our Tier 1 EIS, EIR, and our service development plan. So we're basically on the green box moving forward. Once we complete this effort, hopefully next year, we'll need to decide how to move forward into the future phases of conceptual engineering, Tier 2 environmental work, final design, construction, and operations. So along that, we'll require negotiations with the Union Pacific, commitments for funding, both for equipment, infrastructure, and operations from the state. Next slide. As we look at the Tier 1 program, it's program level, so it's supposed to be a very high level document. It'll meet both federal and state environmental requirements, the EIS and EIR process. It studies all the detailed elements, as many environmental projects do, air, water, biological impacts all throughout the network. One of our goals with this project was to try to keep it at this high level. So look at 1,000 foot of right-of-way, basically from Colton to Indio. Part of our challenges in cooperation with the FRA is they wanted it to look more like a Tier 2 document with very detailed explanations of project level environmental discussions, identify where we plan on putting bridges, where we plan on putting stations, but we were never really ready to do that with the Tier 1. So that back and forth has caused significant delays in delivering this project. Ultimately, we've found a good middle ground with the FRA to identify where we can narrow it down, we will, but we just can't take it to the Tier 2 level at this phase of the study. So that's been a challenge that we've really worked closely with FRA and in the leadership at RCTC has been great in stepping up and trying to push back to make sure our needs are being met as we move the project forward. Next slide. So where we are is we've done a lot of work to complete the technical studies for each of those detailed elements. We're currently reviewing the administrative draft, going back and forth and having our team at BB&K review each phase of the document to make sure we're supportive of it. We've come to agreement with FRA that with their review times, we see a light at the end of the tunnel here that will release the draft environmental document, hopefully in the spring, summer of next year. That's when the public hearings will go out, and that's where we'll hopefully look to get to the finish line with a record of decision at December of 2021. Just as a heads up, as we start, we're working on our outreach program. As we share this document, we know there's a lot of supporters of this project and a lot of champions. We're going to provide an opportunity for all of them to raise their hands and identify support of the project, as well as we want to make sure if anyone has any technical concerns about the details of the environmental document, we want to get that feedback as well to make sure that's incorporated in our final plan so that it's very clear when we get to that record of decision that we're in a very supported position. Next slide. So in addition, concurrently, we've been working on a service development plan, which is really the first time we take all these big picture concepts of running a rail service to Indio and narrow it down and make sure it's realistic, identify potential costs, identify what equipment we're going to run, do the FTA required ridership and revenue forecasts, identify financial planning, how are we going to fund it, how can we phase it, look at the benefit cost analysis, is it worth it, economic impact, what is it going to do for Coachella Valley visitors, economy, and try to pull that all together to really come up with a plan to justify the project and identify where to go. Next slide. So part of our challenge with that is, in order to meet the PREA federal regulations, so that, you know, the bottom line, we want to get federal funds for this project to build it and construct it, we have to meet those requirements. And so part of that modeling and what's required with a service development plan is doing a detailed rail model that looks at various build alternatives. So there would be potentially like a low build alternative where we just added passing sidings at some of the stations, up to a full build alternative where we added a full triple track all the way from Coachella to Colton. The performance goals to run this in the model required by the federal rules are the on-time performance of the passenger trains need to be at 90%. There can be no unreasonable delay in freight rail, which is a huge one to mix if we're trying to share their actual infrastructure. And the estimated project-specific infrastructure needs need to be met. Through this process, UP has actually been a good partner with our consultants. They've been open and honest about providing the number of trains they anticipate to use in the future, what the infrastructure looks like to build the model, identifying where they would like to see, you know, crossovers or extra sidings or where the triple track should go. So I commend their effort in this study. And it's been really interesting to see how this has played out. The model on the bottom of this chart really kind of tells a story on why we just can't use the rail that's out there. It reminds me of the high school, you know, math problem. If a train going this direction, a train going that direction, where do they meet? It's kind of the same thing. So what we have is the hill. As many of you know, the San Gorgonio Pass, you probably drive through it on a regular basis. From a rail perspective, it is very challenging. You know, going from Colton to Beaumont, you have a 1,600-foot climb. So the grades for the rail need to be as smooth as possible. And as you can imagine, just like the truck climbing lane, if you're behind a slow-moving freight train, the passenger trains really, you know, can't pass. Similarly, on the way down the hill, you're going to have a similar problem. You don't want a runaway train, so those trains need to control their speeds all the way from the top of the Beaumont at the grade down 2,600 feet all the way to Coachella. So it's basically, you know, a vertical ascent or descent for the entire trip, Colton to Coachella. Similarly, as far as train speeds, some of you are familiar with the San Mateo Canyon. There's a lot of curves and winds through there to get the rail through that section. We'll need to just kind of follow that along and need to make sure that as those trains, freight trains move slow, we have an opportunity to get around them. So we find that kind of helpful. We're going to include this in our outreach. It's also part of the latest fact sheet that we're presented and sharing with the group. Next slide. So basically, in order for us to meet all those goals, we would look at a full third main track from Colton to Coachella. That's the only one that gets us 90% on time. Where we ran into some trouble was FRA wanted us to look, well, what would it take to run third track all the way to, say, Rancho Mirage? And then from Rancho Mirage to Indio, the last section, 12, 16 miles, we only have 2 sets of track. So they've insisted that we insert a mid-build alternative as a sensitivity analysis. So that took us another 4 to 6 months to go ahead and redo that. And then they also required us to include that analysis into the environmental document. So we had to make further adjustments with that. So we're at the point where I think we're both comfortable with, you know, what the documents include, but realistically we'll need to negotiate and figure out what that track structure will really look like at the end of the day. In addition to the third main track, where BNSF and Union Pacific connect in Colton, there's some significant track work that needs to be done to make sure that is a smooth connection and trains aren't delayed there. We'll also need to improve signal equipment, adjust signal spacing, and also look at structures. As we've identified where that third track would need to go, certain highway interchanges and rail bridges that go along the 10 that some of which, like Bob Hope, that haven't been there that long, were never intended or there wasn't funding at the time to allow for a third track underneath. So we'll need to look at potentially adjusting some of those if we go forward. And also stations and platforms need to be built and identified, improved rail crossings along the way. As I mentioned, San Timoteo, there's a crossing there that's at a really awkward angle. We're going to need to figure out a safe way to address that. So conceptually, the infrastructure needed would be about $1 billion to try to meet this need to have a free running railroad that we could run at above 90% for passengers. In the scheme of things, that is a big number, but at the same time, there are a lot of state rail projects through the Transit Intercity Rail Grant Program. They've awarded over $5.5 billion for intercity and commuter projects throughout the state over the past several years. And just as perspective and climate change, San Diego and Sandag, our partners in the South, earlier this year released a rail plan that's $177 billion for reforming all their transit network with 400 miles of new rail and a $4 billion union station there at the airport. So it is a lot of money, but in the scheme of what other people are talking about, I think we need to be positioned so that we can be competitive and be part of the solution. Next slide. So as progress on our service development plan, we're continuing on the service implementation and phasing to see how we could actually pull this off and make it happen. We're finalizing our finance plan and completing our cost benefit analysis with anticipation of that service development plan being completed in the fall of 2021. So it looks like, on the next slide, if you could please, we're coming together. We see the light at the end of the tunnel that we should finish this phase of the project at the end of next year. If all goes well, we'll have a lot of outreach and communication coming recently in the near future, and we'll have to address that and work with all of our champions on this commission and in the community to try to keep this project moving forward. During that time, we'll look at opportunities for additional funding for next phase planning activities, see where we need to go, what we need to position before we go into some sort of tier 2 program, or figure out where we're going to move this project forward. Next slide. So I do want to thank everyone for all the support on this project. It's definitely something that has taken longer than we'd like, but we've applied all of our resources and professionalism to try to make sure we can keep it moving forward to meet the needs of our constituents. And we have a lot more to come next spring. So I'll open it up to any questions, or if anyone else has any comments, I'd be glad to hear them.
Very good, thank you. First up I have in the queue, Councilmember Betts, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that's a lot to digest. The question I think is, do we have buy-in from the railroad that, you know, they're going to give us everything we need on this so that we're not running into a dead end, you know, years down the road where we worked towards something and then they said, sorry, we just don't have track? Is that what the third track is all about?
Sheldon, can I take that answer,
Yeah, please?
Thank you. Commissioner, we are, the third track alternative is the only viable alternative we see that could potentially meet with Union Pacific approval. And I know there were a lot of conditional words included in that sentence. Our goal with this service development plan and the environmental document is to provide the most feasible alternative that could garner their agreement. They're not going to agree at this stage in the process to anything. We'll have to finish this first phase. We'll have to get their comments during the environmental document review process, see what their comments are, and then we'll have to go into the second phase. So absolutely nothing is certain whatsoever. We are trying to position ourselves with a feasible and reasonable proposal that we could perhaps negotiate some agreement with Union Pacific.
Okay, and so I understand that. Thank you. I know it's a very complicated process. I'm just thinking is we're going to put a lot of planning dollars into something without getting them to say yes first, and I understand that may not be possible, but it would seem in my way of thinking that we would find out if we got a go or a no-go from them to some type of commitment that says, okay, we're going to embark on this very intensive, expensive study. Are you going to go along with it? The other question I have, just throw this out there. I forget what YouTube video it was or where it was in the world that I saw this, but they had car ferries, was a huge part of the train service. And I know a lot of the commuters and people that are clogging up the I-10 pass and using that pass are people going off for their vacations with their RVs and whatever else. If you see the traffic that's jammed up there. So I don't know if you're looking at your feasibility studies for ridership, if there's a possibility for a car ferry system where somebody drives onto the ferry, takes the train, and then unloads their car and continues on their way, and that gets them through the pass more quickly. But I just saw that on a YouTube video somewhere, and it struck me as for this, it may be something worthwhile to look at. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and this is Sheldon, if I might, that concept of auto train, and years ago when I worked at Amtrak, they've been doing an auto train for probably 30, 40 years, running from the East Coast, going basically from Washington, D.C. down to Florida for the snowbirds. So that does exist. The problem is it takes a couple hours to go ahead and load the cars, and then it's a long overnight journey, and then it takes a long time to unload the cars. So it's not that it's an unrealistic idea. I just think that the perfect location, this may not be a long enough trip to allow for time to load and unload those cars. But it is an interesting concept for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Spiegel? Karen, you have your hand raised? Go ahead. Go ahead, Supervisor Spiegel. Karen, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, yes.
All right, go right ahead.
Just a second one. My question was answered. I think it was Russ that said about the cooperation with the railroads. I think that was my biggest concern and how well they're going to be working with us. So that was it.
All right, Councilmember Vinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to the other comments, is there support among the other counties in moving forward with this?
Yeah, we've had, just at a staff level, we've had technical advisory committees with members of the other agencies. In general, they are supportive, and on a good sense, LA and Orange County residents would benefit from the service by being able to access the Coachella Valley. So from that level, there has been support.
And can I add that this will probably be a conversation in San Bernardino County, in that, and we have not, because we don't have a draft environmental document to to go present to their board. I expect that when we do go out for public review, we will go to the SBCTA board to present the conversation. I do know there is probably concern in San Bernardino County. They have their Arrow project, which extends rail service from San Bernardino into Redlands. It's currently under construction. They have chosen their stops. This train will roll through Colton, through Loma Linda, and through Redlands if we have rail out to the Coachella Valley. And I think San Bernardino County is concerned that that service will interfere with their Arrow service that they're investing. So we'll to be determined from San Bernardino whether or not they will support 2 trains a day coming through San Bernardino County without stopping.
Okay,
They may
thank
prefer
you.
it doesn't stop. So we'll see. We'll have to go reach out to their board to get their input.
Okay, and thank you for that. In addition to that, I know it's way early in the process, but is there a reasonable way? I'm just kind of looking at it in the Colton area and how we transition going from the rail that's really follows the 10 and then goes south along the 215-91. Is there going to be some major difficulty in room out there to make that transition?
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned we do have that as a highlighted project as far as that Colton connector. We would look, there's an existing rail, single rail that makes that connection. We would want to kind of double track that to give us more flexibility. It looks like there's available right away at this time, and potentially one of our follow-up studies could really focus on that connection to identify what those impacts would really be, what it might look like, how feasible that is, and just try to nail down some of those specifics at specific locations.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend staff for their report and the incredible amount of work that's gone into this. This is a very important project for the Coachella Valley and for all of Southern California that tries to connect with the Coachella Valley. What we do know is that we have an incoming federal administration that will be led by someone who proudly identifies himself as a train guy. And that may provide us with some additional support that we've not had for this project over the last few years. So I think it's something that is important to the entire region, and that we should continue to do the work to position ourselves so that if there is funding for this project, that we are ready to go.
Couldn't agree more. Councilmember Gregory.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to quickly add my voice as thanks to the commission and all the staff and others that have continued to work on this. And I very much appreciate the presentation. I had heard bits and pieces as we've gone along about the history. I hear from constituents continuously on this matter. So this helps fill in a lot of the blanks. I had not seen the Hill issue laid out this way. It's very clear. So I'm glad that's going to be included as part of the presentation. It's as everything is, it's excruciatingly slow. And those of us that would, benefit maybe a little more directly know it's very, very needed. But very encouraged to see that it continues to be given the proper priority and continues to be acted on, and would just continue to encourage the same. Thank you.
Oh, my apologies. I was muted. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gregory. Great comments. Supervisor Perez, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, just very quickly, once again, thank you for the presentation. And, this vision, quite frankly, dates back many, many years to your father, Ben,
yep.
And as well to Greg Pettis. And and obviously others as well. But I think it's incumbent upon us that we do everything possible to make this happen, quite frankly, in their honor. And as well to ensure that we continue to develop our area and have these transportation access points for all our communities, even outside the Coachella Valley. And with that said, though, I'm wondering, and it goes back to the first, I think the first question that was raised, maybe it was by Russell. Once again, it hasn't been a steady ride, unfortunately, with Union Pacific. And I'm just wondering, and I know that there's been ongoing conversations with folks out there, but I'm wondering who are the folks that you get to talk to within Union Pacific? I agree that my hope is that we can create and build a stronger partnership with folks out there. It just doesn't seem like it's moving in that direction, but I'm just wondering what can we do between now and when we're shovel ready to make sure that we're ready for funding from the federal government, that we don't have these situations later where they're going to challenge this project or block the movement of this project advancing. So Any thoughts on that, Ann, or others, as to what we can do over the course of these next, I don't know, months, years, moving forward?
Sure. And just to let you know too, the special event train situation was a bit of an anomaly because of its, it was a special event status and it would have required a significant investment. But for this service, we do have a good relationship with Union Pacific. We engage with them not only related to this, but also the Lausanne corridor, which I think could have just set a precedent for how we can work with Union Pacific. The Lausanne corridor, which runs, the surf liner up and down the coast, just entered into some agreements with Union Pacific to pay them an access fee for the right to run on their track. I think that is probably the precedent for the future in coming to an agreement with Union Pacific. So we are staying engaged in statewide conversations. We know we have support from the State Transportation Agency for this service. They're very enthusiastic about it. I think probably our best bet at this stage in the project is to stay engaged with Caltrans, State Transportation Agency, and Union Pacific about broader policy issues, making sure we're keeping them informed. I think that's our best approach right now. And then it may come to a point where we may have to have higher level engagement from elected officials and others at Union Pacific.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good. Any other members that wish to speak? I know Mayor Pro Tem Furman from India, you had your hand raised.
Yes, I'm sorry, I had some technical difficulties on my laptop, but I just wanted to express my appreciation to staff and Mr. Peterson for his presentation. I came on this commission 2 years ago, and I've heard about the project, but this is the first time I really got to see an in-depth presentation about it. And I appreciate it in the city of Indio. We support this from many different standpoints, transportation, economic development, connectability to our neighboring counties and cities. So this is actually a deal breaker. And moving along, we love to see this come to fruition. The special transportation trains was a different project, but I see more of a longevity project with this. And I think it's going to benefit the whole Coachella Valley as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just so you know, your microphone is very garbled. I think we picked up, we were able to hear everything, but there's a lot of static in the background.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just want to let you know. All right. I don't see any other hands raised. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward today. Unless there's any other questions, we can go ahead and move on to the next item. Is there any public comment on this item, actually? And I take it this is to receive and file, correct? Okay. All right, not seeing any hands raised for public comment. With that, we will go on to our commissioners and executive directors report. Commissioners have anything to bring forward for report?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, just a second, Mr. Betts. I see a hand raised by Mr. Hanna from Norco.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ben, I just wanted to say that today I invited Councilmember Hoffman to join in with us so he'll know what he's getting into and who he's going to have to deal with. And but he's tough. And I want to tell you what a good job you've done this year. And it's been a pleasure working with all you folks. And Jan, good luck and congratulations on your promotions. I'm sure you'll do a good job, and I've really enjoyed, I don't know how many years I've been on here, but it's 10 or so, but it's been very educational to see the number of projects that gets done, and it's cooperation and everybody. And I want to thank Ann and her magnificent staff and everything, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you. We're going to miss you, sir. All right. Councilmember Betts?
Yeah, sorry. When we had a consent item that came up, it was regarding the CHP work along the construction zone. And so I'll just bring this up generally, and I don't know where it fits in, but if you drive the I-10 pass during the construction, they have a sign that says speed limit strictly enforced. The problem is the speed limit is not strictly enforced, and if you're brave enough to drive the 60-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, you run a real good chance of getting rear-ended. So your choice is to go 70 and risk getting this strictly enforced ticket. And what I didn't pull it from consent, but I had hoped to mention here is that if CHP is going to do one of these contracts with us, that we actually make sure they are strictly enforcing the speed limit, because people are doing 70, 80, 90 miles an hour through a construction zone, and it's very, very dangerous. So I'm sorry I missed on consent, but there we go now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harnick? Oh, I think you're muted, Councilmember.
Okay, there it is. Thank you, Chair Benoit. I wanted to recognize what an amazing year that you've led RCTC through, and what an amazing job you've done. And I know there's been recognition from RCTC. Of course, everything's a little irregular, interesting in this year. So we don't get to present you with a plaque or, a dog.
Actually, speaking of irregular, I had a very nice visit from Lisa Mobley just yesterday, and she was able to bring me my honorary gavel.
Okay.
I do have a little bit of a memento from the year, so thank you from staff for sending that over, and for Lisa for coming by yesterday and handing that off to me.
Well, wonderful. And, you've just done such an amazing job with an open mind, with respect for everyone, and taking such an inclusive and respectful approach to everyone on this commission. And it's been incredible watching you, and I thank you for all I've learned from you and all you've done for our entire county. So thank you so much for this year. And, I'll be calling you.
Happy to be there anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised. Ann, did you have your executive director report?
I do. Thank you very much. I would also like to echo staff appreciation for Chair Benoit and the work that he did this year. We very much appreciated working with you throughout the year. We certainly had some challenges, and I would say we put him to work double duty, because he sometimes was our backup IT guy as we tried to figure out how to maneuver a virtual environment. So, sir, thank you very much for your support. And Commissioner Hanna, thank you very much for the kind words, and we're certainly going to miss you very much. A couple of other brief comments. Commissioners, you will all be getting a copy of our annual report. We have worked on a different format this year that is more user-friendly, that gets the information out, and it will be distributed to you shortly. So take a look at our new format for our annual report and let us know what you think. And then also, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize two colleagues who I have worked with for a very long time, who are retiring from the County of Riverside. And I see that Patty Romo is still with us at the meeting today. So first off, congratulations and thank you to Patty Romo. Patty has been the Director of Transportation at the County of Riverside, I think, for the past 12 years. She came over to the county from Caltrans, where I was privileged to work with her there. She's an outstanding professional and outstanding public servant, and I'd like to congratulate and thank her for all of the great work she's done throughout actually the entire Inland Empire, and for her work here in Riverside County. So Patty, thank you and congratulations. She's retiring at the end of the month. Our very own Mark Lancaster has moved over to the County of Riverside to fill to try and fill Patty's very big shoes. So congratulations to Mark Lancaster for his new assignment. And then finally, George Johnson, the county administrative officer, is also retiring this month. George grew up on the engineering side of the house, and I've known him for several decades as well. And so I'd like to congratulate George on his retirement and thank him for his outstanding partnership with RCTC throughout the year. So thank you, commissioners, very much, and happy holidays to you all.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments or from anyone? If not,